The city of Ashvend stretched under a sky of eternal twilight, a veil of gray clouds heavy with the ash of long-forgotten wars. Its towers and spires rose like silent sentinels, reflecting the dim light of lanterns that burned along cobblestone streets. Within the palace walls, luxury and cruelty walked hand in hand. Lady Elara moved among the gilded halls with a grace that belied the fear she carried in her chest. She was the queen's daughter, yet her life was far from free. Every smile, every bow, every word was measured, weighed against the cold judgment of her mother, Queen Althara. Elara's only solace was the rare moments she could slip from the palace into the shadowed streets below. The market under Ashvend's oldest bridge was forbidden to nobles, but it held a dangerous charm she could not resist. There, merchants sold oddities from far lands, and the air was thick with the scent of spices, smoke, and the tang of iron. It was also a place where whispers of injustice found a voice. On one evening, as the last light of the sun bled behind the mountains, Elara wandered into the market's deepest shadows. The bustle of traders and buyers faded, replaced by the uneasy quiet of a place meant for deals darker than gold. And then she saw it, a cage, large enough to hold several men, chained and beaten, their spirits dimmed by suffering. A crowd had gathered, cheering the cruelty of their auction. At the center of the cage stood one man apart from the others. Even in chains, he seemed unbroken. His posture was proud, his shoulders broad, and his eyes glowed faintly, like embers hidden beneath ash. There was a quiet power about him, a storm held in restraint. Elara felt her breath catch. She did not know his name, but something in her chest tightened, as if fate itself had reached out to her. The auctioneer's voice rang out, grating and sharp. "Who will offer for the alpha slave? He is strong, obedient, loyal. But cruel masters beware. He is not a man to be tamed lightly." The crowd shouted their bids. Nobles and mercenaries, rich merchants and cruel adventurers, each raising the sum of coins in a contest of dominance. Elara's fingers trembled as she held the thin silver chain around her neck, the only possession left of her mother. Its charm was small, yet powerful, imbued with a protective spell. She had worn it since childhood, and it was more than jewelry. It was a memory, a link to love long gone. She knew the danger, knew that no noble had ever interfered in the market below the city, yet she could not turn away. The sight of the alpha slave, proud even in his chains, ignited something within her: anger at the cruelty, pity for the suffering, and something more complicated, an inexplicable pull of destiny. Before she fully realized what she was doing, Elara stepped forward. "I will take him," she said, her voice quiet but firm. The crowd laughed. The auctioneer sneered. "The lady offers her only necklace? That is not enough for him. Raise your offer, gentlemen." Elara's pulse thundered in her ears. The coin could be stolen, replaced, or earned again. But the necklace, her only connection to her mother, was all she had of true value. Without hesitation, she unclasped it and placed it on the table. "This is my offer," she said. "This necklace, and nothing more." The crowd murmured. Some laughed, others scoffed. But the auctioneer, curious, tapped his staff on the table. "Very well," he said slowly. "She offers her only treasure. Do you accept, alpha slave?" Kale's eyes met hers. For a long moment, he said nothing. His gaze was piercing, reading not only her action but the fear, courage, and something unspoken in her soul. Then, without a word, he stepped toward her, chains clinking. The auctioneer snatched the necklace, examined it, then nodded. "It is done. She has bought his freedom." As KL emerged from the cage, his movement was fluid, controlled, each step filled with strength and awareness. He towered over Elara, yet he did not touch her. His eyes studied her. a storm of emotion contained behind the steady glow of his gaze. "You gave me life," he murmured, his voice deep, resonant, carrying the weight of centuries. "And for that, I must claim you." Ilara froze. She had expected gratitude, perhaps a bow, maybe a word of caution or warning, but not this, a declaration that made her blood run hotter and colder at the same time. I do not understand," she whispered. Kale's lips curved into a faint shadow of a smile, almost imperceptible, like the first edge of dawn. "You will," he said simply. "Soon, you will understand that this is more than freedom. You and I are bound now, by a debt older than either of us, and debts must be repaid." A sudden noise shattered the moment, the clanging of bells high in the city. Alarms. Guards moving through the streets with haste. Ilara's stomach dropped. She had broken the law of Ashven by stepping into the market, and worse, she had freed a slave, an act punishable by death, or worse. Kale's hand brushed against her arm, firm and guiding. "Come," he said. "We must leave before they find us." Together, they fled through the narrow alleys, shadows clinging to them like silk. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest, fear and exhilaration warring within her. She could feel Kale's strength behind her, the promise of protection, yet also the undeniable weight of the claim he had laid upon her. He was no ordinary man, she felt it in the air around him, in the way even the darkness seemed to bend to his presence. They reached the ruins of an old watchtower, crumbling stones and ivy swallowing the structure. Kael moved to shield her from the outside world, placing himself between her and the distant shouts of the guards. "Why did you save me?" he asked finally, his voice quiet now, carrying the curiosity of someone who had never known kindness. "I could not let them suffer," she replied, trembling. "It was wrong. You did not deserve this." Kale's eyes softened for a brief instant, but his voice remained grave. "Few act without reason. Fewer still act without cost. You have risked your life, your future, for me. That is no small thing." Ilara's throat tightened. She had not thought of herself in those terms, only of the wrong she could undo, the lives she could touch. Yet Kale's words, heavy with truth and expectation, made her feel the enormity of what she had done. "Kale, I cannot repay you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming but not threatening. "You cannot, but you do not need to," he said. "By freeing me, you have set fate in motion. And now, we are bound. I will not abandon you, Ilara. I will not let them take you from me." Her name on his lips sounded strange and beautiful, like it had been shaped by fire and wind and shadow. Ilara swallowed hard, knowing that her life had changed in a single, impossible moment. She had saved him, but in doing so, she had entwined her fate with his, and the weight of that bond pressed upon her chest. A shadow moved at the edge of the ruins. Ilara's heart leaped. Kale's hand was on hers in an instant, guiding, protective. The danger was real, and the city was alive with pursuit. She had given everything for him, her necklace, her safety, her freedom, and yet she felt the stirrings of something dangerous, something thrilling, in the knowledge that Kale had claimed her as his mate. And as the bells of Ashven tolled in the distance, warning of pursuit, Ilara realized the truth. Her life, as she knew it, was over. The world of shadows, of magic, and of destiny had reached out and claimed her. And at its center stood Kale, free and unbroken, but bound to her in ways neither of them yet understood. Cliffhanger. In the darkness, the Queen's emissaries moved silently, their eyes fixed on the ruins. Ilara and Kale had escaped the market, but the city itself would not forgive such defiance, and the consequences of her choice were only beginning to unfold. The ruins of the old watchtower stood like a sentinel on the edge of Ashvin's city, crumbling stones wrapped in ivy and shadow. Inside, KL moved with quiet grace, surveying the surroundings with a warrior's precision. The streets below hummed with danger. The queen's emissaries would not rest until they had captured the alpha slave and the noblewoman who dared defy the laws of Ashven. Ilara followed closely, her hands brushing the cold walls, trying to calm the racing of her heart. The memory of Kale's declaration still echoed in her mind. He had called her his mate, a word she barely understood but could feel like fire in her chest. And now, in the safety of the ruins, the weight of her choice pressed down on her. She had given her only necklace, her link to the past, to free him, and in return, she had bound herself to a destiny she could not yet see. Kale's gaze softened as he noticed her hesitation. "Elara," he said, his voice low, carrying both strength and warmth. "You do not need to fear what comes next. We are together in this, and I will protect you." I am not used to being protected," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I have always had to take care of myself." Kale studied her, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "And yet, you risked your life for me. You chose me over your safety. That courage, that is why we are bound. Not by magic alone, but by choice." Elara's heart thudded painfully in her chest. She had never felt such intensity in a gaze, nor such quiet command. Kale was more than a warrior. He was a force of nature, calm yet powerful, dangerous yet protective. And in that balance, she felt herself drawn closer to him, though the fear of what might come still lingered. Kale led her to a small chamber within the ruins, where old tapestries hung in tatters and dust lay thick on the floor. He knelt to inspect the remnants of a magical seal etched into the stones. "These ruins were once part of an old kingdom," he explained. "A kingdom that fell to treachery and dark sorcery. I was bound here by a curse long before I became a slave." Ilara's eyes widened. "A curse?" Kale nodded. "A powerful sorcerer sought to destroy my family and take control of the kingdom. He could not kill me outright, so he bound my spirit to servitude. Every master I served, every chain I wore, it was part of that curse. Until now, I had no hope of freedom." Ilara reached out, her hand brushing his. "And now?" she asked. Kale's eyes met hers, stormy and intense. "Now, you have given me life, but our bond is complicated. The curse is old, and it is not yet fully broken. There are forces in this city that would see you trapped along with me if they discover the truth." Her pulse quickened. "What do we do?" Kale's expression softened, but a shadow lingered in his eyes. "We prepare. We must be ready for what is coming, and we must learn to trust each other fully, not just in battle, but in heart and soul." Days passed in the ruins. Kale taught her to move silently through shadows, to sense danger before it arrived, and to wield small bits of magic that had survived in the stones. Ilara discovered a strength within herself she had never known, a courage that came not from nobility or privilege, but from the fierce desire to protect Kale and herself. In the quiet moments, when the world outside seemed distant, their bond deepened. Kale's gaze lingered on her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Yet he never forced himself upon her. He respected her space, even as his presence dominated it, and she found herself drawn to him, not just by gratitude, but by a growing awareness that their fates were intertwined in ways she could not yet name. One evening, as the pale moonlight filtered through the broken roof of the ruins, Kale approached her. "Elara," he said softly, "there is more to you than courage. You have a heart that sees beyond what others fear. That is why I chose to claim you as my mate. It is not a chain, but a promise." Ilara felt a shiver run through her. The word mate was heavy with meaning, with destiny, yet it did not frighten her. Instead, it filled her with a sense of purpose. I do not know if I am ready," she whispered. Kale's hand brushed against hers, gentle but firm. "No one is ever ready for destiny. It chooses us, whether we understand it or not. But you will learn, and I will be by your side." Their quiet moment was shattered by a sudden disturbance. A shadow moved at the edge of the ruins, swift and silent. Kale's body tensed, and before Alara could react, he was in front of her, his eyes blazing with a light that seemed almost otherworldly. A figure emerged from the darkness, the Queen's sorcerer, a man known for his cruelty and dark spells. He carried an amulet that pulsed with a sinister glow. "So, the Alpha slave is free," he hissed. "And the noblewoman thinks she can hide him here? How amusing." Kael stepped forward, placing himself between Elara and the sorcerer. "Leave now, or face the consequences," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The sorcerer laughed. A cold, cruel sound. "Do you really think your strength can protect you? This city will not forgive your defiance, and the magic that binds you will bring ruin to you both." Kael's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, and the air seemed to shimmer with power. A faint wind stirred the ruins, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. "You do not understand what you face," he said. "I am no longer a slave, and I will not let harm come to her." The sorcerer's amulet pulsed brighter, and a wave of dark energy shot toward them. Kael moved like a shadow, intercepting it with a shield of light that crackled around his hands. The force slammed against him, but he stood firm, his expression unwavering. Elara watched, heart pounding. She had never seen such power, nor such determination. And in that moment, she understood the depth of the bond between them. He was not just protecting her life. He was defending their shared destiny, the fragile thread of hope that connected them. The sorcerer, realizing his attack was repelled, withdrew with a sneer. Kael turned to Elara, his chest heaving, eyes softening as he looked at her. "You see," he said, "this world is filled with forces that would use us, that would destroy us. But together, we can face them. You have awakened something in me, Elara. Not just freedom, but strength. I did not know I possessed." Ilara's hands shook as she reached for his. "Kael, I am scared," she admitted. "But I trust you." He took her hands in his, their warmth a tether in the cold ruins. "Trust is the beginning," he said softly. "And courage will carry us further than fear ever could." As the night deepened, they sat among the ruins, sharing stories of the past and dreams of a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. Kael spoke of his homeland, of betrayal and loss, and Elara spoke of her mother, her fears, and her longing for a life of choice. By dawn, a fragile bond had formed not just of obligation or survival, but of understanding, respect, and the beginnings of love. Yet even as they felt that fragile hope, the shadows outside stirred. The Queen's army had discovered their location, and the sorcerer's warning lingered like a chill in the air. Elara looked at Kael, her heart both heavy and light. "We have only just begun," she whispered. Kael's eyes glowed faintly, filled with determination. "Then let them come. Together, we are stronger than they know." Also, cliffhanger. Outside the ruins, dark figures moved silently, circling their hideout. The Queen had sent not just soldiers, but hunters skilled in magic and stealth. Elara and Kael would have to face the coming storm, and their bond would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. The first light of dawn spilled over the ruined watchtower, painting the stone walls with pale gold. Elara's heart raced as she peered through the broken archways. Dark figures moved at the edges of the city below the Queen's hunters, relentless and silent, encircling the ruins like shadows come alive. Their purpose was clear: to reclaim the alpha slave, to punish the noblewoman who had dared defy Ashven, and to crush any hope that might have sprung from her act of courage. Kael stood beside her, a calm storm in human form. His presence radiated strength, and even in the face of overwhelming numbers, his eyes glowed with a quiet confidence. He reached for Alara's hand, and she felt a surge of courage simply by being near him. "Today, we either fight or we fall," Kael said softly, yet every word carried authority. "But know this, you are not alone. We face this together." Alara swallowed her fear and nodded. She could feel the bond between them, unbroken and unyielding. The necklace she had given him was gone, but the magic of their connection remained, stronger than any chain. She had freed him, and in doing so, she had also freed herself from the fear that had long held her captive. The first attack came as a whisper of wind, almost unnoticed. Hunters emerged from the shadows, their weapons glinting with deadly precision. Kael moved like a shadow, intercepting each strike with controlled power. Every swing of his sword, every shift of his body, spoke of years of training and the hidden strength of a man no longer bound by chains. Alara watched in awe, but she did not remain idle. The lessons Kael had taught her over the past days surged through her mind. She ducked and dodged, guiding herself through the battle with surprising skill. Each movement strengthened her confidence, each small success a reminder that courage could be learned as well as born. The Queen's emissaries pressed closer, their numbers overwhelming. Kael sensed the rising danger and stepped forward, his hands crackling with a faint light that seemed to push back the shadows themselves. The air around him shimmered with energy, and for a moment, even the hunters hesitated. "You cannot hide in ruins forever." The lead hunter spat, his voice harsh. "The Queen demands her prize." Kael's response was a wordless roar. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the hunters staggered as if struck by an invisible force. Ilara's eyes widened. She had never seen him unleash such raw power. Yet as Kael fought, he remained mindful of her, his every move protecting her, ensuring she was never in true danger. In the chaos, a sudden, dark wave surged from the Queen's sorcerer, the same man who had warned them days ago. He emerged from the shadows, holding an amulet that glowed with a sinister energy. "This ends now," he hissed, his voice carrying the coldness of death itself. Kael's eyes narrowed, his light flickering in response to the dark magic. He raised his hand, and a shield of energy formed around them, deflecting the sorcerer's attack. The ruins shook, stones tumbling, as the battle of power escalated. Alara's breath caught in her throat. "Kael," she cried. "I am here," he said, his voice steady. "Stay close." A shiver of fear ran through her, but it was tempered by determination. She had chosen this path, and now she would face it with him. She stepped forward, focusing her small magic, channeling it to strengthen Kael's shield. The bond they shared glowed faintly in response, a visible tether of light between them. Together, they withstood the sorcerer's attack. But the battle was not yet over. The sorcerer, realizing that direct attacks were failing, shifted his strategy. He cast a spell of binding, a dark thread aimed directly at Alara. Kael reacted instantly, but the magic grazed her shoulder, burning faintly and leaving a trail of blackened light. Alara gasped, feeling the first true sting of danger. Kael's hands glowed brighter, a radiant energy that began to unravel the dark threads of the spell. "Do not fear," he said, his voice fierce but steady. "You are not bound. You never will be, as long as I stand." The sorcerer hissed and retreated, vanishing into the shadows, leaving only a faint echo of his threat. Kael turned to Alara, his expression softening. "You were brave," he said. "Not just in battle, but in your heart." Alara's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and awe. She had faced death and dark magic, yet she had not faltered. And she had done it not alone, but with Kael by her side. The bond between them, forged in danger and strengthened by choice, felt unbreakable. Hours passed as they tended to the ruins and to each other. Kael's wounds were minor, but Alara's shoulder burned faintly, a reminder of the danger they had faced. He gently brushed her hair from her face, his fingers warm against her skin. "You are more than you realize," he murmured. "And together, we are unstoppable." Alara looked into his eyes, seeing both the storm of his past and the calm of his present. "Kael, I feel like I understand now," she whispered. "I understand why you claimed me, and why I feel drawn to you. It is not just fate." Kael's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability flickering in the depths of his eyes. "It is stronger. It is choice, courage, and trust. You chose me, and in doing so, you have given us both a new beginning." As night fell, they sat together in the ruins, the city below silent but tense. Stars began to pierce the twilight sky, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Alara leaned against Kael, feeling the steady beat of his heart. She had given him her necklace, her link to the past. And in return, he had given her something far greater, the promise of protection, the spark of destiny, and the bond of love forged in fire. But even in the quiet, a sense of unease lingered. The queen would not forget their defiance. The sorcerer's threat had been clear, and the city itself, filled with shadows and secrets, was not yet done testing them. Alara shivered, not from cold, but from the awareness that their journey was far from over. "Kael, what if they come again?" she asked softly. Kael's hand found hers, gripping firmly. "Then we will face them. Together. Fear is not our enemy. Hesitation is, and we will not hesitate." In the darkness, the ruins seemed to hum with life. The bond between them glowed faintly, a tether of light against the encroaching shadow. It was fragile yet strong. A promise and a warning all at once. As they rested, Alara's thoughts wandered to the future. She had freed Kael, and in doing so, she had stepped into a world of magic, danger, and love beyond anything she had known. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Kael beside her, she felt a courage that could defy even the darkest fate. And then, from the shadows, a figure watched silently, a messenger from the queen, carrying news that would shake Ashven to its core. The city was preparing for war, and the queen's wrath would descend like a storm. Kael and Alara were no longer hiding. They were at the center of a destiny that could change the kingdom forever. Cliffhanger. Resolution. Kael tightened his grip on Alara's hand, his eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together, and nothing, not even the queen herself, can break what binds us." The ruins held their breath as the first horn of the queen's army sounded in the distance. The final battle was approaching, and Kael and Alara would need every ounce of courage, trust, and love to survive. Yet in that moment, they were not afraid. For the first time, they understood that freedom, love, and destiny were intertwined, and that together, they could face anything.